With Auburn adding 2 other linebackers from SEC teams, who's starting at that position for the Tigers in 2023?
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yes.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Joining me as he does every single Monday, Lindsay Crosby, writer at auburndaily.com and the host of Locked On MLB Prospects. Over the weekend, Lindsay, Auburn picks up another transfer linebacker just a few days after they add former LSU linebacker DeMario Tolan. They also stay in the SEC West and grab former Ole Miss linebacker Autin Keys. Keys is a guy that has more experience and I think has plenty of upside. I think his floor, Lindsay, is higher than DeMario Tolan's, but from what we've seen so far, I think Tolan has a higher upside. So it's kind of interesting to see how these two will be used and if they could potentially both start at linebacker in 2023.
The big thing for me with bringing in Autin Keys is, like you said, he has the starting experience. I mean, he put up 402 snaps in the SEC last year. Mm-hmm. And so, like, it's something where after you lose Owen Pappoe, you have Cam Riley, Wes Steiner. I've discussed on this show before, I think, when we signed Desmond Tisdale, I've discussed about their lack of performance, so to speak.
Sure.
And how poorly they were graded by, whether that's PFF or other organizations. And so Autin Keys is somebody who started for a defense that, while not the best in the SEC, was also not the worst in the SEC, and can give you, like you said, a stabilizing presence in that room and a high floor of competent linebacker play, because we've seen him do it now for a couple years.
Yeah, and so the discussion changes, right? Going into the portal periods, like, guys, we got to get somebody that could be next to Cam Riley, because you don't feel super confident in Desmond Tisdale. You don't feel super confident in Wesley Steiner. Question marks all over Eugene Asante. And so when they added DeMario Tolan, the former LSU backer, it's like, okay, yeah, he's probably the number 2 linebacker to Cam Riley. Can you go out and get a number 1? Because we all agree Cam Riley, we feel better if he's the number 2 linebacker, not the number 1 linebacker. Of course, he can take a big step. He's got the athleticism and the physical prowess to do that. We just haven't seen him do it. Give us somebody who we've seen do it, and maybe he can bring Cam Riley along. That's the best case scenario. Autin Keys, I love his athleticism. I like the way that he's able to move, and I like the way that he's played consistently on an SEC defense. But Lindsay, the amount that we've seen Keys and the amount that we've seen Tolan, 2 different spectrums of this, right? You mentioned Keys playing over 400 snaps for Ole Miss last year. DeMario Tolan played 70, right? And so you look at that and it's like, well, the 70 snaps where Tolan played, I thought were much better than the 400 snaps that Keys played. But Ole Miss's defensive scheme, like, it's very evident their head coach. We'll talk about their head coach and that fan base and what they think of him in a second. But I don't know. They don't really care about defense, right? And so I don't know if we could really take any of the production side of what Keys did at Ole Miss and say, oh, that's necessarily going to translate. I think you got to look at the traits. And when you look at the traits of what Keys can do, decent first step, he moves well laterally, likes physical, he likes to get down into the hole and engage in contact. So you like all of those things. It's going to be really interesting, though, if both of these guys start and Auburn's in a base 4-2-5 or something like that, and Cam Riley's on the sideline. Be very, very interesting to see what happens after spring if that's how it shakes out.
Yeah, and so those practices leading into A-Day are going to be instrumental as far as figuring out who does what, who's comfortable where. And the good thing for Auburn is everybody's learning the scheme at the same time. It's a brand new coach, and so it's not like you have somebody who's been doing this in this defense for a couple of years and a Cam Riley or a Wes Steiner that you're looking at having to possibly replace. Everybody's starting fresh. The thing that I do want to see as well is if there's no more guys taken from the portal before spring, and we'll get to that later too. Do you see some of these guys in this room, like a Cam Riley, possibly move down and play some at edge. I mean, Cam Riley being 6'5", 230, the weight's not what you typically want to see from an edge, but he has the size as far as height and length. And so I'd be interested to see, scenarios where all three of these guys are on the field at the same time. Is Cam Riley rushing the passer versus dropping into coverage, or kind of how do you deploy these guys and use them to their strengths versus just throwing out whoever you have out there?
Yeah, it'll also be interesting to see what Cam Riley does, like the pecking order. Like if Cam Riley's not with the first group or the first group of linebackers out at A-Day, how does he respond to that? If both Tolan and Keys are ahead of him. But regardless, the room is better. The room is more experienced. There's more upside in the linebacker room. And so you love that. And it still looks like Auburn's going after more linebackers. The guy from Virginia who's got multiple 100 tackle seasons, seems like he's interested. He was in Auburn this past weekend visiting. And so there's still a lot of upside to what this room can bring. But I just think, and we're going to talk about the scholarship situation towards the end of the show, but I just think you're going to see guys get processed or choose to leave. I just don't know how I don't know how you're Wesley Steiner and you're looking at this situation and like, I'm going to play in 2023. Look, I like Wesley Steiner, and I think he's super athletic. I just don't think he was developed properly over his time at Auburn. Like, it stinks. It's super unfair to him because he broke all of Owen Papo's athletic matrix records, the year after Owen did it. So it's like the guy can move, the guy can be an athlete, but this, as far as developing as a linebacker, I don't think Auburn did that. And Desmond Tisdale, I think that really hurts his situation to play. So I don't know. I mean, there's a chance, Lindsay, they just love Auburn and they want to stay here, right? And that would be great. Desmond Tisdale being your fourth linebacker in the room. Eugene Asante, he's in a little bit tougher a situation because he already transferred, but it's just the pecking order of linebacker. It seems to be 1A, 1B, 1C right now. When you look at Cam Riley, Autin Keys, and DeMario Tolan, I don't care what order you put them in. But after that, to me, Lindsay, there is a significant drop-off before you get to Woodyard, the redshirt freshman that I think we'll see more of this spring.
Yeah, and that was the wild card I was about to bring up, is Robert Woodyard was the highest-rated recruit, I think, in last year's class, or one of them. And from everything that we've heard, did a fantastic job over the fall, working with the scout team, got a little bit of time in on defense, but not a ton. And so there's the question of, does he take a leap or not? And if I remember correctly, Josh Aldridge has had some decent linebackers in his coaching career. He's coached some guys up a bit. And so you have to like the athleticism of Steiner, like you said, and then the potential of Woodyard. Can he, my thought process here is, yes, you have Autin Keys. He's a junior. He technically has 2 years of time remaining.
Yeah.
But if Tolan's your starter and then Robert Woodyard can come to speed, you have a pair of guys who can run that position for a couple of years before either leaving for the NFL or graduation. Yeah. So there's a lot of, I'm kind of doing a short term and a long term. Short term, it's like you have Cam Riley as a senior, Wes Steiner's a junior. Keys is here 1 or 2 years, depending on if he's good enough to get drafted or not. It's just an interesting short term and long term. There's a lot of ways you can go with this, and I'm just kind of curious how it shakes out.
Yeah, and Woodyard's definitely part of the long term, but the only guy in this room that's part of the short term and the long term is DeMario Tolan. And so I know Autin Keys is exciting, right? And the Ole Miss stuff is fun, but I think DeMario Tolan is a better prospect. Is he more experienced? No, but I think he's a better prospect in all of this. I think DeMario Tolan could be a really special linebacker. Not that Autin Keys can't. I just think one's more likely than the other. But as far as 2023, Lindsay, let me ask you this question. And I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this. I'm putting you on the spot here. If you had to rank the total snaps, it's a perfect world, no injuries, right? No injuries in 2023 for the linebacker room. If you had to predict total snaps in order, I'm not asking you to say how many snaps they played, but who has the most, who has the second most, who has the third most, and then who has the fourth most. I'm going right now. I'm saying Cam Riley still has the first and most. I will say Autin Keys has second. DeMario Tolan has third. And Woodyard has fourth. That is not what I want to happen, but that is my prediction as we sit here recording this Sunday evening on January 15th.
Yeah, it's what I want to happen is a little different from what you just laid out. I think you're kind of on
Tolan
track
1.
I want Tolan 1.
I want Tolan 1 still, and then Keys 2, then Cam Riley 3, then Woodyard 4.
Yeah, I want Tolan 1, but I feel like that's probably not going to be what we get. Like you said, I'm going to go with Autin Keys 1 because I think they targeted him for a reason. They like the year starting experience. Cam Riley 2, DeMario Tolan 3, Robert Woodyard 4, with the caveat of Riley may jump to number 1 if he takes some snaps at edge as well as a depth piece at edge, because, kind of given the lack of bodies you have there, you brought in a 1-year guy and so yeah, depending on how that works out. But I've got Keys as 1 because obviously they wanted to go get an SEC experienced linebacker for a reason. Mm-hmm. Like you said, they probably want that high floor that Keys can give you.
Yeah, Keys, Tolan has it. And look, Cam Riley has a high floor too with just his ability. It's just, can he take that next step? And look, I think the best case scenario is these 2 new guys come in and they push Cam Riley, and Cam Riley takes that next step and kind of does what we all believe that he's capable of. We'll see. There's a lot of things that Ole Miss has to be petty and upset to Auburn about. And obviously Autin Keys was the latest, but they're starting to freak out a little bit, Lindsay. And I want to poke that bear just for a second. Coming up right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. Look, we've kind of experienced what it was like when you go out and get high talent to come be a part of your team. And sure, the real world's not fully like the transfer portal, but it kind of is. And so you can navigate all of that with LinkedIn Jobs. Just head over to linkedinjobs.com/lockedoncollege, and you can post your job for free. It's not even tampering, folks. It's not even tampering. You can just post it. So I guess it kind of is like the transfer portal. But no, all seriousness, LinkedIn Jobs helps you attract the qualified candidates who you want to talk to faster. They go beyond resume data, and they use insights from your job post, the company, and their 875 million members to post in front of the most qualified candidates. Not quite as many players that entered the portal, but it's close. Check it out. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Lindsay Crosby, our guest, as he is every single Monday. So one of my favorite Twitter follows is Message Board Geniuses.
It's great.
It's so good. It's so good. And every now and then I'll be in the corner at auburnlive.com and I'm like, this is going to get screenshotted in a few hours and be shared at Message Board Geniuses. And I'm usually right. But man, I don't know what the name of the popular board is for Ole Miss, but he has been sharing some folks that are calling out for Hugh Freeze to say, release the NDA agreement, fire Hugh Freeze before the season. Ole Miss fans, let's start sharing info to get him out because he's having too much success. It's driving them crazy, Lindsay. And it's I don't think they have the awareness of as a fan base to look themselves in the mirror and say, because this is the same fan base, Lindsay, that was no, you're not going to take Lane Kiffin. No, you're not going to take Lane Kiffin.
Why would he take a downgrade to Auburn? That's what they said.
Right. And look, they were right. Lane Kiffin stayed in Oxford. But now it almost seems like they're upset that they were right about that. And it's just eating them up. And it's been really, 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 really fun to watch. And the fact that Hugh Freeze has been able to come in here and, if you look at On3's portal rankings, Auburn has the number 2 transfer class. If you look at 247, Auburn has the number 4 transfer class. Regardless, it's very good. But wait, Lindsay, I thought Lane Kiffin was the portal king. I guess not.
Man, Carol Baskin must have killed that too. No, so Auburn and Ole Miss isn't even really a rivalry. When you look at Auburn versus Ole Miss, the historic record of this is 35 wins for Auburn, 11 for Ole Miss. But wait, there's more. Since the year 2000, Auburn is 18-4 in football against Ole Miss. Yikes. It would be 18-5, but conveniently, the 2012 victory by Ole Miss was vacated. Wonder what that's about.
Yeah.
Ole Miss has not won back-to-back football games against Auburn. Are you ready for this? Since 1952.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's not even really a rivalry. That's the thing. Like, it's not. Auburn doesn't. It's almost a little sad, right? Like they put such a big importance on this. It's like when Arkansas couldn't get over the Bo Nix backwards fumble thing.
Right.
And it's like, we literally don't think about you at all. And this is all you can think about for a year. Ole Miss is the same way. I literally don't spend my time thinking, hey, I wonder if we'll beat Ole Miss this year. I do not care. And they are obsessed with Auburn because of, one, trying to hire Lane Kiffin, and then two, hiring Hugh Freeze and him coming in and already recruiting the portal better than the portal king does.
Yeah, and then just the downplaying constantly of all of this. Like Jake Thornton, the offensive line coach that Auburn has snagged, and I mean, that dude may be a recruiting king when it's all said and done. He's been unbelievable. You got to think he's been involved with getting some of these guys through the portal and the 8 or 9 offensive linemen that are coming in. He's a part of that. Flipped to Xavier Miller, right, from Ole Miss. And it's always like it quickly turns into, oh, well, Lane wanted that to happen. Lane wanted Thornton gone. Like, what? Like, I don't think that even makes sense. Or like Lane probably wasn't going to end up taking a Xavier Miller. I'm like, the number 1 JUCO tackle? You're kidding me. Like, are you serious right now?
You just don't need him.
Yeah. And so it's just the whole narrative. It's driving them crazy. And it's just been fun to watch because it's just happening, a month after the whole Lane Kiffin drama, which thank goodness I was wrong on that. I wanted Lane Kiffin, and there was a massive gap between number 2. And number 2 probably was Hugh Freeze. But man, I can't imagine anybody operating the first month on the job better than Hugh Freeze. I mean, what an incredible job this guy's done so far.
In retrospect, it's almost like a bullet dodged. I mean, it's something
no doubt.
Like Lane Kiffin kind of built his thing on the portal and bringing in players and hasn't necessarily been anywhere for an incredibly long time. So you don't have a long track record of he builds a program with his own prep recruits because it's so much portal stuff. And then he's to the next place.
That's right.
And I feel kind of lucky that it worked out where Auburn has somebody who just bought a spot to build his own home. And it's like, okay, Hugh Freeze plans to be here for a while.
Build that king a castle. Give him a moat. Give him whatever he wants.
Custom home. He's going to be here for a minute. And
I hope so.
That is exciting. And I'm not going to say I feel bad about not getting Lane Kiffin. I mean, I was disappointed at the time.
I was too.
But in retrospect, I think it worked out better for Auburn. And I think it worked out better for the rest of the SEC because I think that Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, as much as they hate to believe it, they kind of have a ceiling. And Ole Miss isn't really going to get over that ceiling.
I think they hit it. And now it's like they've been broken. Like the way Lane handled the last month of the season, like strategically made no sense whatsoever.
And then now they're having to pay all this extra money to him that could go towards facilities, maybe fixing the leak in the roof that you complained about in the press conference. Like, all of these basic things that could be done that are now being used in salary to Lane Kiffin because you got him a massive deal.
That's right.
To keep him. And it's okay, that's fine. We're saving money, and arguably we're better off anyway.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. All right, so Hugh Freeze adding guys seemingly at will via the portal. 12 guys in right now. What position groups do we expect to see moving forward? We'll talk about it in just a second right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number 1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Don't forget BetOnline. It's where the game starts. Be sure to check them out. BetOnline, once again, where the game starts. Lindsay, Crosby, final few minutes here. So we did this conversation last week on Locked On Auburn, but I think it's still important until the portal window closes next week. Which 3 positions will still keep that going? Which 3 positions do you think Auburn still needs to add via the portal? And some of you are saying, well, if Auburn got 3 more guys, it'd probably put them over the scholarship limit. Yes. But even if all of the high school kids that come in, like they're still going to be, they're going to have to like navigate this whole roster management thing. Hugh is still adding guys, and there's going to be guys that are either processed or he knows that guys are going to leave. So they're going they're going to get as close to that number as they possibly can because they know the guys are going to leave throughout the spring. So we'll see what happens with that. So we're going to keep that conversation at 3, Lindsay. Heck, there may be guys that leave this week because it's my understanding that all of the veteran players are meeting with On to Victory to discuss their deals this week. Mm-hmm. And there may be folks that are unhappy. So we'll see what happens with that. Now, my 3 from the last time we had this conversation, I don't know if it's changed that much. I would go interior offensive lineman, number 1, edge, number 2. Number 3 is where it gets a little tricky to me. And I guess by default, it's quarterback, but I don't care if it's a starting quarterback. I just kind of want another dude in the room because we're all assuming TJ Finley's going to leave after the spring. The more I look at Robbie's stuff, the more I look at old Robbie tape, the more I look at his stats, the more I'm okay with Robbie Ashford. So, and actually excited about Robbie Ashford. So I'll go that order. Interior offensive lineman, edge rusher, quarterback. You?
So I think I can see the value of saying interior offensive line number 1, because when you look at a possible starting 5 now, you're projecting Xavier Miller kicking in to guard. So I can understand.
Or Cam Stutz at right guard.
Or Cam Stutz. So either way, you either have one of your new guys kicking in or you have somebody who, like a Cam Stutz. I think I'm going with...
What do you mean by that?
Nothing. He's a lovely person. I'm going with edge number 1. And I think the reason I'm doing that is we saw last year how Auburn felt like they were good to go with Derek Hall and Eku Leota and Marcus Bragg. And then, they said, we have a 1 through 3 here. We have 2 guys and Hall and Leota we can put on the field at the same time in pass rushing situations. And then Leota went down with the torn pec. And so you were Derek Hall, Marcus Bragg, and then Dylan Brooks. Right now, your 3 deep at the position is super senior Elijah McAllister, redshirt sophomore Dylan Brooks, and true freshman Brenton Williams. And so to me, you have more options in the interior offensive line currently on the roster. You may not love those options.
You got Keldrick Falk too.
True.
Did you mention him?
I did not mention him. You do have Keldrick Falk.
So 2 true freshmen. Yeah.
Two true freshmen. And I've heard good things about Keldrick Falk and his ability to possibly contribute early, but I worry that one injury, especially to somebody like McAllister, means that your first or second guy up is going to be a true freshman.
I agree.
In the SEC. So edge rusher number 1, interior offensive line number 2. And that wasn't a need for me. But now that I kind of look at it, and it's like, okay, you have the option of Miller or somebody who's been here. Like
and I think Cam Stutz is okay, right? But if one of them get hurt, I think you're kind of in a situation, or like Jeremiah Wright. What if Jeremiah Wright goes down? You need that. What if I'm blanking on the new center, Avery Jones. What if Avery Jones goes down? You need
Tate
somebody.
Johnson's ready to go. Tate Johnson is going to finish his wings, hopefully.
Yep. Hopefully his appetite's bigger now. That'd be huge.
Yeah, that would be huge. We need him to be huge. And then number 3, I think I'm going to go the same as you as far as if TJ Finley leaves like we're expecting. From what I understand, he needs to graduate first. If he leaves like we're expecting him to leave, then TJ, then you need a quarterback in that room because you have Robbie Ashford, who we feel good about. You've been higher on him than most. You have redshirt freshman Holden Gariner, and then you've got baby goat Hank Brown.
Right.
But you are looking at 2 different players that have freshmen in their class.
I do think it's important to point out that in the spring, I think Hugh is looking at the spring roster and then the after spring roster, because I think he still is going to want quarterbacks. So TJ's on the spring roster. I'm not sold that they're thinking he's going to be on the roster after that. So at least you have enough quarterbacks to run a practice.
Yeah.
Because Hank's not coming in. Hank doesn't impact the scholarship count until the first day of summer. So I am a little surprised that we haven't added a quarterback, but that may be why, because TJ's still here.
And there has been talk about different quarterbacks that Auburn was trying to work it out with, and either they had an issue class-wise, like a Grayson McCall, or just things where guy was injured and couldn't participate.
And I'm sorry, Lindsay. I want to rephrase what I just said. I thought Auburn would settle at quarterback by this part of the portal. I thought they would say, "Oh, okay, well, let's just go ahead and get a guy that has upside and let him compete with Robbie, see what happens." I thought they would settle at this point. And I'm curious if TJ would have left and no longer been on the roster, if they would have had the scholarship flexibility to do so. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they didn't, and we'll never know the answer to that. But that's what I meant by that. Obviously, if they could have gotten a Grayson McCall, they would have. Obviously, they could have gotten some of these other top guys that they talked to, and some were even on campus. They would have taken them. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify what I meant by when I said that.
Yeah, and they're somewhere near that 85 limit, and we know that. And we don't know exactly what it is. No team just publishes what their scholarship count is. It's a closely held secret. But we know
looks like it's 83.
Yeah, it looks like they're pretty close. And so it kind of hampers your ability to do some stuff. And like you said, Hank Brown doesn't get here until summer. So that's one less body you have to run through spring practice, throw into the threes and things like that. You need multiple guys, especially if somebody has shoulder soreness, somebody gets nicked up, something like that. You need bodies. So Finley staying can impact that. Again, we don't expect him to stay for the actual season. I think he'll be gone before then. It's going to look great at ULM or wherever it may be.
Who knows?
But yeah, I can see quarterback either way. You need somebody. I do think it's nice that, like you said, Hugh Freeze is not settling. There's a couple starting quarterbacks that are still out there. I think Spencer Sanders is still available from Oklahoma State. But all of the slam dunk, this dude is going to come in and be the starter because he's fantastic. That's done. Those guys are all gone.
Right.
And so it's possibly something where he was like, well, I got Finley. And then after spring, we'll see who leaves because they can be here over the summer working with the receivers, getting the chemistry like we always talk about, and then compete with Ashford in the fall.
Yeah, and he will have a better idea of what he's got with Ashford too, which will be important to see. Lindsay, how can people give you some love, brother? What all you got going on?
I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. My show, Locked On MLB Prospects, is available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. You can find the writing, auburndaily.com, and the merch, aushirts.com.
Find all my written work at auburndaily.com as well. And if you've made it this part of the video, please click subscribe. If you're listening on audio, go to YouTube, type in Locked On Auburn and subscribe. We're closing in on 10,000 subs. Be really cool to get there in the next month or so. Appreciate all the support and love. We'll see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.